This you should know. The King of the world cares for you. So much so that even on his deathbed, he waved over his royal messenger because he had a note, a message, just for us, right here today, here at CBI, right here in this room in Northampton, Massachusetts. And that note was so important to the king that he raised up on his elbow and he made sure it was exactly correct, had the royal messenger read it back. And only when he was absolutely certain that the contents were exactly how he wanted them did he lean back into his bed and he breathed his last. The 3 princes of the world and the 4 princesses of the world, they began crying out, moaning for their father. The great white eagle threw back her head and shrieked. The Lion King, tears came down his face. Knees buckled and fell in grief, in bereavement. The Queen of the Bees just trembled all over, buzzing. And the royal messenger, she wanted to cry out as well. She loved the king. But she had a mission. She had to do her mission first, and then could think about other things. She composed herself, took a big breath, stood up, and she left the royal chamber. When she opened the door, there were throngs of people there in the inner courtyard. People who loved the king, who wanted to be close to the king. She didn't say a word. She left that to others. But instead, using her mighty left arm and her mighty right arm, she made a space just so she could slip on through. And she made her way, because this was no ordinary, mild-mannered mail carrier who rides a buggy all day long, like in our world. No, this is the king's royal messenger. She had to survive and win tests of strength and agility and wit, and she was the best. She made her way through the throngs of people, and she came to the stairs. And she was going down the stairs when it was so tight that her arms were not strong enough, she'd just point to the medallion around her neck. The Star of David with a blazing sun in the center. And that was enough that people just gave her that little bit of space. And she could make her way down the stairs to an outer courtyard, also filled with people. And she made her way through until she came and she could open up the outer doors of the palace. I wish I could say it was a wide open field, because then she could ride on her horse and she could be here before we were done telling stories this afternoon. But it wasn't. Instead, it was a second palace, just as filled with people as the first palace. But she persevered, made her way through the inner courtyard, down the stairs, the outer courtyard, and then a third palace and a fourth palace. Days went by, turned into weeks, turned into months, 10 palaces, 50 palaces, 100 palaces. It turned into years. Decades went by, centuries went by. 500 palaces, 999 palaces, but still she persevered. And when she opened up the doors of that last palace, it was utter blackness, silence. She took a breath and she stepped. Instantly, she fell off a cliff. Falling, free falling, tumbling, twisting, turning. She let out a scream. Luckily, she did not know that she had just entered the very center of the world, a nearly bottomless pit that nothing has ever emerged from since the beginning of time. When she ran out of breath, she realized she was still alive. though falling very quickly. And she remembered her breath, just like she'd practiced so many times. And then an image flew by of her 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Rabbi. She loved Mrs. Rabbi. She learned a lot and she was strict, but she had a circle every morning where what she remembered was that she could share what she knew, not just the things she didn't know. And that Mrs. Rabbi shared about her life as well. And one thing Mrs. Rabbi shared was, she said, children, if you ever find yourself in a hopeless situation, there's only one thing you can do. And that is to sing. To sing. And so she thought that, she began with the songs of prayer, all of the chants she had ever learned. And what she realized was she started falling slower. And then she moved to all the folk songs that she knew. And she not only stopped falling, but started rising. When she went to all the children's songs she knew, all the rhyming songs and the lullabies, she was going higher and higher until she came to a doorway, another doorway. And she hovered right in front of it. And she was able just to reach out, open it up, and step out from that place. And she was now in a narrow cave with a light at the end. And she walked it. And when she entered the king's royal bedroom. And there was the king on his bed, waving to her, because he had a message, a note, for the good people at the synagogue in Northampton, Massachusetts. One thing that's fun about telling stories is you get to choose, like, where do you stop a story? This could be a good spot, especially for Halloween. This could be a fine place to stop. Kafka does not stop here. You could read what he wrote, and it's dark and alienated. Here's what I say. Here's how I end it. I say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Because what we can do is we can sit in our very comfortable chair in our house, and we can imagine with our mind's eye, the eye of imagination, the king's royal messenger coming to our door and knocking on the door of our house. And in our mind's eye, the eye of imagination, we can welcome the king's royal messenger into our living room, have tea with her, ask her about the king or the great white eagle or the lion king whom she knew very well. And right there in our own living room, we can receive that the letter that the king of the world wrote for us, just for us. And we can read it there. And I wish that for all of us, that we read that letter and then we find a friend, someone that we love, and share that letter with that came to us from the King of the world. Thank you.